Hey everybody, welcome to Q&A video number 47. Make sure you keep asking questions, doesn't matter about. They can be about anything. Just know I don't respond to review requests or Let's Play questions in videos, but we'll respond to them in the comments. You can post your questions in the comments below, you can send them to me via PM, or you can put them in the appropriate section of the forum, or on my Steam group. There's a discussion topic available for that. Gameplay in the background is Tropico 3, mostly because I felt like playing it to make sure it worked properly and everything, but oh well, it's certainly some decent gameplay footage, I hope. At any rate, let's start with a question from DarkXAssassin255. You're a YouTube partner. Will this mean that in the future, when you have 100,000 subscribers, will you stop answering comments and ignoring the fans like other YouTube partners? I know that's a typo, but anyway. I will keep answering comments. It's just what I do. Now, if I get a ton of comments, then I can't realistically answer all of them. That's just a fact of the matter. And in fact, on certain videos that have a lot of comments, I do have a really hard time actually keeping track of these comments. So, for instance, the Skyrim review, I can't really tell where new comments are with that thing. So, I have issues actually being able to keep up with comments on that one in particular, but also a few other videos where I had to scroll through a mountain of comments basically to find what I'm actually looking for. So, that's more of a matter of not being able to find the comment and actually be able to respond to it more than anything else. And that sort of thing does happen. You have to understand that. And you should also understand by now that I don't... Anyway, let's start with a question from DarkXAssassin255. You're a YouTube partner. Will this mean that in the future, when you have 100,000 subscribers, will you stop answering comments and ignoring the... That's supposed to be fans, I think. Like the other YouTube partners. I will not ignore the fans, and I will also answer as many comments as I can. Now, you have to understand that when you get to a certain number of comments, then it becomes pretty hard to sift through them all, and find the new ones, and find what you're looking for, that sort of thing. So, from a practical standpoint, I can't answer every single comment out there. They might get buried under a sea of old comments, and I just go, no, it's not there. I'll go up toward the top where all the newer comments are, and I'll look for there, and be like, it's not there either. Ah! That sort of thing does happen, and it currently even happens. I have a hard time keeping track of certain comments on, say, my Skyrim review, because there's a lot of comments on that video. And so, if I get a lot of comments on a video, then, again, it's going to be hard to sift through them all, and you just have to understand that. Now, does that mean that I'll stop answering comments? Of course not. I'll keep answering as many comments as I can. And as long as they're comments with substance, that maybe they have questions, or they want me to clarify something, or something like that, then I will certainly answer those as best I can. But I can't get all of them. And you already know that I don't answer every single comment out there. I read them all, but I don't answer them all. So, it's just a matter of which ones will I answer versus which ones do I feel don't have quite enough substance, or I don't really have anything to go off of to actually respond to them, or something like that. It's a practical matter in that case. And again, I will not ignore the fans. It's just a fact of the matter. I'm not going to do that. I hate it when people do that. So, don't get that idea in your head that I'm going to ignore you guys or anything like that, because I'm certainly not going to ignore you. Next one is from Innocent Chuck. Do you think that the 8th generation of consoles, Wii U, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4, will be the last because of the rising sales of gaming on Apple and Samsung phones and tablets? No. Because it's a completely different market. Have you tried to play an FPS on a tablet before? It's a nightmare. They don't control well. They don't play well at all. And most gaming experiences on tablets and phones are quick, casual things for a reason. They're meant as time wasters. You don't get a phone or a tablet and think, oh, I'm going to have a full-fledged gaming experience on this thing. No, you get it for its multimedia use. And so, games are an afterthought with those devices. And it shows when you try to actually play certain games on them. Now, there are iOS ports of certain games out there, like, I believe The World Ends With You has an iOS port, and so do a couple of the Final Fantasy games. Deus Ex The Fall is coming exclusively to iOS and to Android, I believe. Which is going to be a nightmare, because nobody's going to play it, and it's going to just be like, really guys, you went there? But certain games work well on tablets and phones, and they're usually not the kind of games you would play on a console. Let's put it that way. So, will the next gen of consoles be the last? Probably not. But not because of phones and tablets, obviously. It might be because it just fails horribly, as the costs are too high, or something like that. But it won't be because of phones and tablets. Let's put it that way. Because, again, it's a completely different market. Next one's from Battlefield Joe 97. Do you admire the fact that Sony is treating indie developers with respect, unlike Microsoft, where in the past and right now mistreated them? I feel like everyone should treat the indies the same, with the same amount of respect. And there's a problem when anyone seems to think that treating them as second rate or something like that is a good thing, because that just bothers me. There are tons of indie games out there that are actually really good. Even though they don't really have high production values, they're still really good games. And so when people act like they're second rate, like Microsoft does, well, that's a problem. And Microsoft has a lot of weird business practices in general, so they're just kind of this weird anomaly. But we shouldn't really be praising Sony for basically capitalizing on something that Microsoft is doing. Because that's exactly what they're doing here. They are looking at whatever Microsoft is doing and how much they're blundering things up. And they're going, we're going to do not that. We're going to do the opposite of that because it'll help our devices sell more. That's really why they're acting like they like indies so much with the PlayStation 4. It's not that they actually care about the indies. It's that they know it's a savvy business decision against Microsoft. So that's why they're doing it. Should we admire the fact that they're actually treating indie developers with more respect than Microsoft? I suppose. But I don't really admire Sony at all. I've never liked them as a corporation. I've never liked their devices all that much. I mean, the hardware has usually been okay, but it's just I've never really been a particularly big fan of them. And when I see them doing this, I think we shouldn't really praise it so much as we should expect it from them. We should expect the same from Microsoft or from anyone out there. Valve with Steam and everything. We should expect the same level of high respect for indies as, say, mainstream developers get. Across everyone. Not just Sony and Microsoft or something like that. It's not really fair to say, well, Sony's doing this, it's worthy of praise. No, we should expect it from them and be like, okay, good, you've done that. Now move along. Next one's from Rip Out Your Prejudice. Are you sick with overhyped modern games making the story center stage at the cost of gameplay? Depends on how they do it. Because if it's a good story, then it's fine. As long as the gameplay is decent. If the gameplay sucks, though, then you have a problem. The moment you actually compromise one thing for the sake of the other, there's a serious issue. Now, certain genres are more conducive to having better stories at the cost of gameplay than others. Like, for instance, adventure games. It's pretty much expected for them to have a good story in order to be good games, because the gameplay isn't really there. With point-and-click games in particular, or parser-based games in particular, they don't really have good gameplay so much as they have puzzles that you have to solve, and then that progresses the story. So what you really have to focus on there is the story. Now, that's pretty much expected, right? But there are certain genres out there that when you remove the gameplay at the as a counter for the story, then there's a certain problem with it. And once your gameplay becomes bad, that's when it's really an issue. Now, there aren't that many of them out there that really have this problem. But what you're seeing a lot of is that the story is more important in certain genres than it was previously, and we sit there and go, why is this really here? Games like FPSs, for instance. Story was never really a big thing with an FPS until more recently. And except for a handful of games that do story pretty well, there aren't all that many of them that do it all that well. It's just a bunch of very scripted events that end up being really boring. FPS is not a conducive genre to this sort of thing. And so, when you put the story in there at the cost of gameplay, then it becomes a problem. That's the kind of thing I don't like, and I'm kind of sick of that. But at the same time, if they do it well, then I don't mind it. So there's a lot of hype going around the gaming right now, and it really does bother me quite a bit. But yes, I'm sick of the overhyped ones. Like, I look at something like Uncharted, for instance, and go, why is that so popular? Why do people think it's as amazing as it is? I mean, like Uncharted 2, for instance, 10 out of 10 across the board. And I go, why? Why did anybody like it as much as they did? The gameplay doesn't look all that great. The story doesn't look all that great. It's got a lot of nice set pieces, but that's about it. Doesn't mean it's a bad game. I haven't played it personally, but it just doesn't look like something that would be a 10 out of 10 game. And I just sit there going, what? Why is this so hyped up? It's pretty to look at, but is it really a good game? That's the kind of stuff that gets annoying. So, again, I don't know whether Uncharted is any good or not. I haven't played it personally, but it's just stuff like that. I think that's what you're actually going for with this question. I'm kind of tired of it, but they haven't done it quite enough and butchered the games quite enough to really bother me with it too much. And the last one for today is from Tom Riddle. What's your opinion on Capcom's locked content on the disc? Now, they haven't really done all that much of that in the past year or so, at least, but it's insulting. When you have locked content on the disc that you're selling as DLC, then not only are you outright lying to your customers, because you're saying it's DLC when it's not. Well, actually, DLC, dislocked content. But they're calling it downloadable content. That's the problem. And they're outright lying about that. It's not downloadable. It's on the disc. And so it should be included with the game, right off the bat. If it's on the disc, you should be able to access it immediately, not paying for an extra down the line. That's just insulting. And so I really hope they just stop doing that altogether. It drives me nuts when I see stuff like that. It's ridiculous. And when you get to that point, you're just nickel and diming everybody. And nobody likes you when you nickel and dime. It's that simple. Anyway, that was Q&A 47. Make sure you keep asking questions, and I will catch you guys in later videos.